Hey, welcome back to Reading Out Loud on the Heavenly Spheres with a treatise on traditional astrology by Helena Avalar and Luis Ribeiro. We are on, oh my gosh, I didn't even check the chapter and it doesn't say it. Chapter 8, Aspects, and we're on page 113 at the very top, starting with specific cases of aspects. All right. When a planet forms no aspects to other planets, it is said to be void or void of course. In these instances, it forms only separating aspects, since applying aspects describe future actions or motivations in the case of nativities. A planet in this condition, has a capacity for action diminished or impeded. It indicates a state of inaction or a lack of will in the matter signified by the planet. This type of situation is particularly important with the moon, which, because it is the fastest planet, it's one of the most frequently void. Besides that, the moon is the planet that describes the most eminent actions in a horoscope. This type of analysis is particularly relevant in a horary chart or a mundane chart or an election chart or in an election. In a natal chart, although the concept is equally valid and applicable, the interpretive context is different and the significance is relative. I never thought of like a void of course applying to anything but the moon, but I guess it is a thing for all planets. That's interesting. Although apparently simple, the definition of void of course has led to some discussions between modern authors. Some say that a planet is void of course only when it doesn't form any aspects to another planet before it leaves the sign where it is posited. Thus, a planet that makes only separating aspects but applies to an out of sign aspect is considered void. This would not be true in the previous definition. This difference of opinion is due to incomplete or questionable definitions from various sources because most traditional astrologers did not consider out of sign aspects. Thus, a planet would have to enter into the next sign to form an aspect, even when the orb would allow it to form the aspect in the previous sign. Note: applications and separations only occur between planets. Aspects of planets to the ascendant, midheaven, or pot of fortune, other points follow different rules. See page 115. In our opinion, this discussion is academic. The objective of the interpretation is to obtain a description of the action of the planet. The fact that a planet does not make an application reveals a lack of action. If, on the other hand, the aspect that the planet applies to is only perfected in the following sign, in effect, void of course for some authors, we would have an indication of some circumstance will change in sign, before any action can occur, the perfection of the aspect. What's most important in such questions is to describe the chart rather than theorizing about it. This is the difference between an understanding of the chart based upon a practical experience and one based strictly on theoretical study. When a planet is totally devoid of aspects, applying or separating, it is said to be feral. This condition is considered unfortunate because the planet does not share its qualities with any of the other elements in the chart. Since it has no direct interaction with other planets, its expression becomes weak, and as a consequence, the planet is highlighted in the chart. The effect of a feral planet is even more apparent if the planet is alone in its sign. For instance, in the horoscope of Agatha Christie, Mercury is feral. In this case, mercurial qualities, communication, rationality, and intellect are highlighted, which is obvious in the life of the author's detective stories. Nevertheless, the feral condition of Mercury creates a disintegration between her notable career as a writer and her personal life, which was far more removed. The condition is more noteworthy given the fact that Mercury is the ascendant ruler. The dynamism of the planetary aspects, whose basis is the application and separation of the planets, produces even more complex patterns, which will be discussed later in this chapter. Dexter and sinister aspects. And I need to, I should have done this earlier. I don't want to lose power. It was giving me that little hello. Okay. Boom. Power charging has begun. Okay. Dexter and sinister aspects. Of the 5 traditional aspects, the trine, the square, and sextile are considered double aspects. These aspects can occur in 2 directions from the starting point, one to the left and one to the right. Thus, there are actually 2 types of trines, squares, and sextiles. Those that occur to the left of the planet in the direction of the order of the signs are called sinister aspects. Those that occur to the right in this direction, contrary to the order of the signs, are called dexter aspects. The word sinister from the Latin means left and does not have the negative connotations which we currently attribute to it. To distinguish between a dexter and a sinister aspect, one must start with the faster planet, which is responsible for the formation of the aspect. If the aspect is formed in the direction contrary to the order of the signs, it is a dexter aspect. If it is formed in the direction of the order of the signs, it is a sinister aspect. Seen another way, if one looks at the faster planet from the center of the chart, all the aspects which form to its right are dexter, while all that form to its left are sinister. For instance, Venus. Consider Venus at 7 degrees of Cancer. There she is. No, that's Agatha's chart. Okay, I thought maybe there was a chart. Okay. All right, we'll consider Venus at 7 degrees Cancer and Saturn at 10 degrees of Scorpio. Jupiter at 5 Aries. Venus is within the orb of the 2 slower planets, projecting a trine to Saturn and a square to Jupiter. The trine to Saturn is sinister because it's projected along the order of the signs, Cancer to Leo to Virgo to Libra and finally to Scorpio. Okay, and it's, I mean, that kind of goes like in secondary motion. Not that that is what it is, but when I'm looking at it, that's what I see. I got this question wrong in a test I took, and now I think I finally just got it. Oh my goodness. Okay. The trine to Saturn is sinister because it's projected along the order of the signs. Yada, yada, yada. The square to Jupiter is dexter because it is formed in the order contrary to the order of the signs, from Cancer to Gemini to Taurus and finally to Aries, or what kind of looks like primary motion. I had them backwards. Oh my God. This is why we read books. Okay. The square to Jupiter is the dexter because it's formed in the order contrary to the order of the signs. Okay. A dexter aspect is thought to be stronger than a sinister aspect because it's formed in one direction which the signs rise. Primary motion. It is therefore considered more significant in its actions. On the other hand, if the sinister aspect is milder because its formation in one direction counter to the rising of the signs, but along the natural pace of the moving planets. All right, I got to read that one again. A dexter aspect is thought to be stronger than a sinister aspect because it's formed in the direction in which the signs rise. It is therefore considered more significant in its actions. On the other hand, oh my God, there's a hair. On the other hand, the sinister aspect is milder because it is formed in the direction counter to the rising of the signs, but along the natural pace of the moving planets. Because it is milder, it allows for greater freedom of choice in its actions it represents. This concept is often ignored because it reveals only a very minor difference in the strength of the aspect. Although it doesn't always assume a prominent role in its interpretation, it is very useful when studying an aspect in great detail. Aspects to non-planetary points. Planets can also make aspects to non-planetary points in an astrological chart. The most important are aspects of planets to the ascendant, midheaven, and part of fortune. Since these points do not cast light, they have no physical form. Because they have no physical form, they cannot have orbs or form aspects. The planets, however, can aspect them. In contrast to interplanetary aspects, aspects between planets and points are unilateral because only one of the two, the planet, actively participates in the aspect. The other is merely aspected. In contrast to interplanetary aspects, aspects between the planets and points are unilateral. Okay. To calculate these aspects, we consider whether the point in question is within the limit of the orb of the planet, in the case of a conjunction, or within its projected rays in the case of a trine, square, or sextile. For the four angles of the chart, the part of fortune and the part of fortune, applications and separations are not considered because the movement of these points through the zodiac follows different parameters from the motion of the planets. As to sinister and dexter aspects, the definition is the same, although in this case the active point is always the planet, independent of its speed. For example, in Friedrich Nietzsche's horoscope, the ascendant, which is at 29 degrees of Scorpio in 9 minutes, receives a sinister sextile from Mars at 27 Virgo and a dexter trine from Jupiter at 26 Pisces. In the case of the four angles, only aspects to the ascendant and midheaven are considered. Aspects to the other two angles can easily be deduced from these two. In reality, we're actually examining two axes, which unite opposite angles, the ascendant-descendant and the midheaven imam Kohli. Any planet that is conjunct one of these points is in opposition to the other. When in trine with one, it is sextile to the other and vice versa. When in square to one, it squares the other. It is therefore unnecessary to note all the aspects to all the angles. It is enough to know the aspects to one side of the axes in order to deduce those of the other. Aspects to the house cusp should also be avoided due to the uncertainties as the most accurate method of house calculation. See Appendix 4, additional considerations about the houses. It makes no sense to consider aspects between the various angles nor between two non-planetary points because they do not possess their own light. They cannot aspect each other. Okay, we're going to read the little box. Aspects and sign ascension. Some authors claim that the nature of an aspect can be partially modified by the sign in which the aspect occurs. Thus, aspects that form between signs of fast ascension, Capricorn to Gemini, are shortened. The square acquires the properties of a sextile and the trine those of a square. Aspects that form between signs of long ascension, Cancer to Sagittarius, are stretched. The sextile acquires the properties of the square, and the square becomes like a trine. Although this concept is applied by some practitioners with good results, others contest its validity because it results from combining different frames of reference. The velocity of the sign's ascension due to the inclination of the ecliptic and the aspects, which are based upon the signs. So the ones that rise quicker are shortened, and then so the square is like a sextile and the triangle like a square, so it kind of goes back. And the ones that are longer or stretch, long ascension, they kind of stretch where the sextile becomes more like the square and the square becomes more like a triangle. I've never heard that before, but I've definitely seen like the long ascension and short ascension. I just thought it got applied differently, but I didn't even know how it got applied. That's interesting. That's interesting. Okay, that's enough for this chapter, or this, not chapter, video. Okay, on to the next one. Thanks, guys.